The PlayStation 5 is supposed to usher in the new generation of gaming, but with its on-paper inferior technology compared to its PC counterpart, can it actually do this? Or is it just a budget-friendly machine for 4K gaming? Well, thanks to Insomniac's latest game that you can only play on PS5, we have our answer. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart is the first ever game that incorporates the PS5's latest hardware updates into its gameplay. It effectively uses the DualSense's new functionality and the PS5's blazing fast SSD in a way that simply can't be replicated on any other device. PlayStation isn't just taking game exclusivity, it's also taking hardware exclusivity. Let's break it down.
What just happened?
Now, at first glance, sure, the DualSense is just this more ergonomic, futuristic stormtrooper-looking take on the previously DualShock 4, except it's not. It's so much more. Quality of life improvements aside, the DualSense now houses 3 new features: a built-in mic, haptic feedback, and adaptive triggers. If you've been following the PS5, you already know what these are, and honestly, in theory it doesn't sound all too game-changing or innovative. After all, it's just improving on functionality that's already there, right? But after getting hands-on with Ratchet and Clank, you can actually tell that with the DualSense, the limits of gaming have suddenly broadened. In Rift Apart, adaptive triggers actually play a crucial role in gunplay. In normal games, you may have needed to charge up a gun attack like a laser by aiming down your sights on enemies with L2 or even holding down R2. If, say, you wanted to cancel your shot, you'd probably need to do something like weapon switch mid-charge or jump cancel. In some cases, you wouldn't be able to cancel at all. Now, this isn't necessarily terrible, as this imposed limit can lead to interesting gameplay mechanics, like in the case of Mega Man, but let's put that debate aside for a second. In Ratchet and Clank, thanks to adaptive triggers, you can execute the charging mechanic by simply half-pressing R2, which is just amazingly convenient. Think about it, if you wanted to fire the shot, you just need to press it a little bit more and let go, and if you wanted to cancel, it could be as simple as just letting it go as is. And being able to do so much with just one button adds to the limitless possibility when it comes to adding game mechanics. It frees up the functionality of other buttons such as like L2 or square, and it just allows other actions to be binded to them, expanding the possible gameplay mechanics that can be added into the game. Let's take a look at another gun from Rift Apart, the Enforcer, which is essentially a double-barrel shotgun from which you can either fire shot by shot or unload 2 shots successively depending on how far down you press the trigger. And it's amazing because from this one button, you just have so much more control. Think about what this means for future games. Maybe in Call of Duty, you no longer need a dedicated button to switch between burst fire, single shot, and fully automatic. All you need to do is hold down the R2 trigger with varying intensity. And now that you have a new button available for use, you could assign it to a different feature for a competitive advantage, like a quick slot, frag grenade, or flashbang, or whatever. In fact, devs can even go as far as to create a whole new mechanic that revolves around that now free button. So now you're probably thinking, oh, why not just use a keyboard, right? I got like 104 buttons on that thing. Well, this is where haptic feedback comes in. In a game like Ratchet and Clank, you're traveling between rifts, firing 18 different guns, and being blasted across the map like it's nobody's business. So many things are happening, and they all translate into these mini, cute, detailed little vibrations through the controller. And it all adds to this heightened sense of immersion. Now, immersion can be something very superficial to some, if not most gamers, but it's definitely something worth mentioning because it's just being done so well. If you were impressed by the HD Rumble functionality in the Nintendo Switch Joy-Cons, well, I have to tell you this right now that the haptic feature functionality is just miles ahead. And now, we need to talk about Ratchet and Clank's use of the SSD. From the trailers, you might be skeptical seeing Ratchet travel between these vastly different locations within a split second because, let's be real, it could have been a scripted sequence based on our previous experience with cutscenes. So I'll point out all the obvious things that make its SSD functionality truly next generation. There are actually no loading screens, none whatsoever. If you notice on the PS4 title, the game goes through a brief but noticeable loading screen every time you die. In this game, it simply does not exist. What's more is that there are segments of the game where you actively change locations due to plot. This happens in the midst of combat and you just know that it ain't some slapped together cutscene. Everything from the terrain, to the assets, to the species of enemies you're fighting changes, and you can tell that an entirely new segment of the game that is probably worth gigabytes of information has been loaded in a mere split second. The reason that this can only be experienced on PS5 is because it rocks a unique SSD that doesn't share an ecosystem with other hardware. It's also the main reason you can't install native PS5 games on an external SSD drive. There's even a part where Rivet can switch between two dimensions by hitting a rift fragment. Within a split second, the environment around you changes. Assets such as obstacles have been switched around, entire structures have disappeared or popped out of nowhere, and even new gameplay mechanics are accessible at the push of a button. All of this is only possible through the PS5's unique SSD. Thank you, Mark Cerny. But with all this talk about how amazing the PS5 is, let's not forget that Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart is an amazing game itself. We're dropping a hot review on it next week, so be sure to subscribe, and if you're on FB or Instagram, hit the follow so that you don't miss it. And don't forget of course that you can get cheap PlayStation Wallet from SEAGM delivered directly to your account with secure payment methods recognized across the world. We'll see you in the next one.